Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. And we are back, of course, with Phil McCracken. And I want to say a special hello to Leia Rose. And we are doing the final part of Fellowship of the Ring. So, when we last talked, we were talking from pretty much Bree to the end of Moria. And so now we're going to talk the journey through Lothlórien to the end of the Fellowship movie. So the intention, as always, is we're going to go through the movie and talk about what's accurate to the book and what's different. So anything, Phil, that you want to get into before we pick up in the story?
I think that as we're now in the third part and the final part of our Fellowship of the Ring part of this series, what we're discussing now is probably the most important part of the book and of this movie. So, and there's a lot of things hinting that we have to touch upon, especially when we get to Lothlórien and Galadriel giving out gifts. The gifts symbolize a lot of different things, and there's a lot of reference there. So
You're
once
right.
we get there, we will talk about that. But yeah, I'm ready to go.
Now, I do want to backtrack just one real quick thing and mention something that we talked about in the last stream. Real quick, by the way, Phil, I'm sending an invite link to Mike.
Mike who?
My brother.
Oh, your brother.
Yep.
The guy who likes Melkor, aka Morgoth.
Exactly. Okay, so one thing I want to touch base on from the last stream, just as kind of a reminder, because it ties into this one, is what was happening when the Fellowship is going through Caradhas, the mountain, the snowy mountain, and Frodo stumbles, the ring falls off, and Boromir picks it up. Boromir made his intentions well known, even as far back as, the Council of Elrond, that he thought that the best course of action was for his people, the people of Gondor, to claim the ring to use against Sauron. And of course, everyone shot him down. But as the Fellowship kept going, especially on the Snowy Mountain, we see that scene of the first little bit of temptation start to spring up in Boromir, and he starts to selfishly desire the ring. I bring that up because that is going to play into this part of this discussion quite a bit. And real quick, I want to say hello to Crit of Evers Productions, who says, "Hello, orcs, Phil the dwarf, and Polly the hobbit." Yeah, my hair does kind of look like a hobbit's today.
And Crit is our Gollum / Smeagol.
Sure, we'll call it that. Okay, so picking up where we left off in the story. So the Fellowship has just lost Gandalf, and Gandalf is falling down the chasm where he's going to fight the Balrog. We'll talk about all of that at the next stream when we pick up with Two Towers. So the Fellowship minus Gandalf have now left out what... I know it's not the back door, but I'm going to call it the back door of Moria. The very same place.
The front door. They run into the back door.
Okay, yeah.
So basically, they're going to leave through the front door.
So they left through the front door. The same place, by the way, and I'm going to just really quick touch on this. The same place where, at least in the movie universe, Thrain went missing and Thror was killed by Azog the Defiler.
The battle there, yes, for Khazad-dûm.
Yep.
It's accurate to the movie. So, yes, where they come out, that's the entrance, and that's where the dwarves, after Smaug takes over their kingdom, they try to take back Khazad-dûm, and their battle is right there at the entrance. So it's funny how things point backwards. Kind of similar when they were leaving Bree to go to Rivendell, and they kind of run into Bobo's. They call him the orc, or not the orc, the troll.
Yeah.
So,
Real quick, Phil, I'm going to use an old trick that I would do on Coffee on Korriban. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. But basically, the way it works, Phil, is it's poetry. It rhymes.
oh lordy,
I couldn't resist.
yeah,
So they make it out of Moria, and of course, everyone is absolutely shaken at what they had just seen. They had just seen, at least from their point of view, Gandalf sacrifice his life so that they could escape the monstrosity that was the Balrog. And everyone is upset. Of course, the hobbits the most so. And Aragorn knows that, yes, things suck right now, but we got to keep moving. Otherwise, the orcs are going to keep coming after us. And so after this, we cut back to Isengard, and we see, and I know we've touched on this before, but we see Sauron talking to his Uruk-hai commander, Lurtz, about how the orcs first came to be. So to make a long story short, we know they were elves that were taken in by Melkor and twisted, tortured, and eventually devolving, we'll say, into the orcs that we know today. Now, again, as a reminder, the difference between the normal orcs and the Uruk-hai is that Saruman was somehow crossbreeding them with orcs and, quote, goblin men, to quote Gandalf from the movie. And the advantage that the Uruk-hai have over the orcs is that orcs don't like traveling in sunlight, whereas the Uruk-hai can do it no problem. And in general, they're just bigger and bulkier. And so we see again in the depths of Isengard, Saruman's army of Uruk-hai is really starting to come together now. He's got numerous different troops. They're all kitted out, and he gives the speech, hunt them down, don't stop till they're found, you will taste man flesh, that speech. And he instructs Lurtz, the commander, one of the halflings has something very valuable to me. Bring me all 4 of them alive and unspoiled. But
no, he doesn't say all 4, but he doesn't know how many hobbits are actually in the group. He says, "Bring me the hobbits back alive and
okay,
unspoiled." Like I said, that's important to know that he doesn't know how many hobbits are, because later on, the hobbits he thinks they're bringing to him are the ones that actually have the ring, which they don't. So, you know,
right.
he in a way, not that he knows their names, he thinks he got Frodo and Sam, where in reality he's got Pippin and Mary.
Right.
And that's why in the movie you hear that thing, they think we have the ring, and he goes, if they find out, we're dead if they know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important to know that, because it's chess with smoke and mirrors.
Right.
And Saruman, just as much as Sauron, doesn't know what's going on. Like I said, Saruman don't even know, okay, how many hobbits are in this group. All he
Mm-hmm.
knows is one of the hobbits, presuming 2, let's say they know, both of them know there's 2 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of the hobbits have the ring.
Right.
That's all he knows. That's all they know. So,
So
it's like I said, things work out in a way, but again, it's smoke and mirrors.
exactly. Now, real quick, I realize I just made a mistake. I realize that the Isengard scene that we just talked about doesn't happen until after they get to Lothlórien. So my bad. We're gonna get back on track
It's
now.
okay.
So
You'll be
after,
forgiven.
yeah, so after the Fellowship leaves the front door of Khazad-dûm, they make their way to Lothlórien. And as they're walking through, we start to get introduced to the idea of Galadriel, where Gimli's talking about this quote elf witch of terrible power, and all that look upon her fall under her spell and are never seen again. But we can already hear her whispering to Frodo, quote, "Your footsteps are as the footsteps of doom, and you bring great evil here." And it's here that some of the Lothlórien guard, led by Haldir, if I'm not mistaken, catches them. And Aragorn is able to barter or negotiate some way for them all to go and meet Galadriel. Because initially they were just going to get turned away outright and said you could go no further, correct?
Well, you have to remember backstory. Aragorn has been to Lothlórien. Gandalf has been there.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like the rest of the group, and including Legolas, they never been there.
Right.
Okay. So, welcoming them is you're pushing it. If Aragorn was by himself, they probably would have, he would have been welcome, no problem. If Gandalf was there, they all would have been welcome, no problem.
Right.
But because it's not, I'm not diminishing Aragorn's status, but he don't have the pull yet with the people in Lothlórien to say, okay, these people should be allowed to come in there.
Right.
Even though he's kind of family in a way, because Galadriel is Arwen's grandmother. Okay.
I thought it was aunt.
No, she's her grandmother. Her daughter's the one that marries Elrond. Okay. So, and then if you got Aragorn tracing his lineage, his elf lineage goes all the way to Elros, who is Elrond's twin brother. Again, family relation. And it's not hinted in the book. Everybody we know as the reader and the watchers of the movie, Aragorn has a thing for Arwen. And again, that's her granddaughter. So technically, you can say even at this point, Aragorn is borderline family two times. So yeah, it's not like he's not welcomed. But if you notice who's doing the talking, Aragorn, and apparently just going by what you're seeing in the movie, when he's talking to Haldir, trying to get him to let him in. Yeah, he's the one that succeeds in getting them talking, but they're the only ones that they ever dealt with.
Right.
And the agreement in the book is they all can go, but they all have to be blindfolded.
And it's funny that you say that, because that is actually one point I do distinctly remember from the last time that I read the books, where initially Legolas, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some details, so feel free to fill these in, but Legolas initially wasn't going to be blindfolded, but didn't feel right about that because of how everyone else was going to be treated. So he agreed to get blindfolded too. Can you expand on that?
Aragorn also, but I would say iffy on that because of two reasons. If you know who Legolas, what type of elf he is, he's a wood elf. Okay. Now, technically, his father is the same. You can say Noldor, like Galadriel, Elrond, as the elves that come from originally went to the Undying Lands and came back. But the people that his dad and him being a prince rules over, the elves they rule over are what you would call Cinderland elves. They never went to the Undying Lands. So they're in a special status. Here they are, Noldor elves, technically, him and his father, but the people that are ruling are Cinder elves, and the relationship between the Sindar and the Noldor is the Sindar are a little mad at the Noldor because when they came back to Middle Earth, well, the reason they came back because they were after Melkor and three Summerells. They brought war where they didn't have war. Even though Melkor was there in Middle Earth, he was kind of similar like Sauron, stuck over there in what's the place he rules down there in that little
Mordor.
Mordor. Uh, Melkor is ruling this place up in the north, and everything south is pretty much ruled by the Sindar elves and dwarves and some men. And here come Nordor chasing Melkor and going to after him to start a war. They technically bring war. So the Sindar elves are a little angry at the Noldor for bringing this war.
Right.
So, and then on top of that, you have the brothers who swore their oath to get the Silmarils back, and they don't care if it's men, elf, dwarf, doesn't matter. You get or Melkor, whoever has the Silmarils, they're under an oath to get them back, no matter what. And the Sindar elves are like, we don't want none of this. Kind of think of them, kind of like their attitudes, kind of like Switzerland. We don't want to get involved in nobody's war. Just leave us alone.
Right.
So, yeah. Sorry I took us off track there, but that's important to point out.
No, that's fine. I was actually wondering that why, like what was the difference between the elves of Mirkwood and the elves of Rivendell and Lothlórien?
Right. The one thing is, I believe Legolas's mom was a Sindar elf. So that's why Legolas, they still refer to him not as Noldor, like his father, but they call him a wood elf, is because his mom was a Sindar elf.
Right.
So when Gladriel refers to him, she refers to him as a wood elf kin. You can take what kin means, whatever, Be the only way I can do it to make it simpler for the people. Somebody live in Mississippi and they have a friend live in Alabama. There's really no difference, but the states are very identical. They would call each other kin. Same thing, same deal. That's the best way I could describe it for people.
Right. So real quick, one thing I do want to mention, and this is one thing, Boromir, I've always had kind of a negative opinion of Boromir, but this is one area I actually really respect him for. Because while Aragorn is talking with Haldir, trying to negotiate to get them into Lothlórien, Boromir looks at Frodo and can tell that he's still grieving Gandalf and says, look, dude, you carry enough weight in that ring already. Don't carry the weight of the dead. No. And that was... He didn't have to do that, but he did. And I respect
Boromir's character, even when you're seeing it, but you don't know, like I said, you have no way of knowing. Especially when Aragorn is talking to Haldor, letting them into, and they're talking Elfish. You don't know it. And probably the people, the hobbits don't know it, but Boromir and his brother, his mother has elf blood. Okay, it comes from a part of, yes. His mom comes from a part of Gondor where they're mixed between elf and men. The Prince of the North, that's their uncle. And he's pretty much similar in a way as the Dunedain. They live a long life. They have unique abilities. So not their father, not Denethor, not the Steward. He's a regular human. But his brother and him, through their mother, have a mix of human elf blood, much like Aragorn. So while they're talking Elfish, you're not going to get it through Boromir. He may not say anything, but he knows what they're talking about. I'm pretty sure his mom
Oh,
told him to understand
okay.
some elves talking. And another thing is you don't notice that, but look how everybody's looking while they're talking, and they're looking at Frodo. You
Yeah,
know, Legolas gives him a look. Gimli don't understand it, but he gives him the look, and Boromir gives him the look. It's like, okay, this guy's causing us nothing but trouble, But it's important to know that when you're watching it, Boromir doesn't understand. He does understand Elfish,
right.
So
And e- eventually, like I said, they do manage to get access to Lothlórien, and eventually they're brought before Galadriel and Celeborn. And Celeborn is the first to notice that Gandalf, I mean, I'm sure Galadriel noticed it too, but Celeborn is the first to voice it. There's 8 of you guys here. Where's Gandalf? And of course, Galadriel already knows because I'm sure she could sense it, right?
well, it won't make her out to have the abilities of a divine being. She's a Noldor elf and a higher up Noldor elf, much like her brothers and her father.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say if you're that original elves that go from Middle Earth to the Undying Lands and then they go back, they seem to have more angelic abilities. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Okay. And right now, as far as Nodor are going, uh, Gladriel has some abilities that maybe the regular elves now in Middle Earth don't have, which makes her seem like a little bit more of a divine being. Uh, the only other person at this time you could say that has similar would be Glyffindale, but he's not in the movie. But he has similar. Let's just say has that commanding and or like ability.
Which we said last time he was the one that made the river wash over the ring wraiths,
Yep.
right?
Yep. But remember, they originally wanted him to be part of the fellowship, but he turned it down because Sauron would have noticed and picked up on it that something's going on if he had been a member of the group. And like if you were saying, if you don't want to put the best player on the team that's supposed to be covert.
Exactly.
And
Because he's too
he
well
would
known.
there would have been no way of hiding him. So in a way, that's why Legolas gets the spot. So plus they needed him elsewhere. They needed him up in the north. So
Right. So Galadriel, of course, says he's fallen into shadow. Legolas explains it further that he died fighting the Balrog. And Galadriel says, quote, needless. She says it in response to this. Legolas basically says to the effect of, we needlessly went into Moria. But Galadriel says, needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life, and we don't even know his full purpose. And then she goes around looking. I don't know how to explain this. She says certain things to each members of the Fellowship, right?
yes, but in the movie, she's doing that mind thing with other people.
Right,
That's
and
not in the book.
it's really harped on with Boromir.
That's not in the book. And even if Tolkien would have put that ability in a book, how would you write it?
Right. So
So
what actually happened then in the book?
well, in a book, it's more like take the mind thing out, and she's doing the talking, just like she normally would. The mind part, that's just thrown in for theatrical purposes.
Right.
So, and let's get this one thing that I guess a lot of diehard Tolkien fans would have an issue with. It seems to, in the movie, and not in the book, but in the movies, that Gandalf, out of everybody, is kind of I don't want to say subservient, but underneath Gladriel, and that's not the case. Gladriel is a Nordor elf, okay, a
Hmm.
high standing one, okay. You might want to even say kind of like a princess, okay, not a queen, not a king. You know, she's not the higher up. If anybody would have been king after what's his name? Gilead dies at the hands of Sauron, it was going to be Elrond, but he
Okay.
turns it down. But let's get this straight so we can understand this. Gandalf, Radagast, the Blue Wizards, Sauron are they're not Valar, they're Maiar. They're a little
Right.
lesser. Okay. Considered like angels. Okay. Uh the the powers to be are archangels. Okay. Gandalf, Sauron, all the wizards, and including Solomon or whatever his name is, the evil guy, Sauron. They are
Saruman.
Maiars. They're lessers. But
Right.
compared to power wise, Gladriel couldn't touch none of them.
Which is
It makes it
kind
seem
of
like
funny when
on
we talk
Middle
about
Earth
the
they
Battle of
make
the Five Armies movie.
yeah they the only thing is what I'm trying to point out, they try to make her seem like the ultimate power in the Middle Earth, not where the Undying Lands are, in Middle Earth, and that's far from the case. Uh, the other wizards and Sauron are way more powerful. Just think of an angel appeared on our Earth today. You
Hmm.
couldn't kill it. You couldn't beat it. You couldn't destroy it. Okay. Now, Middle Earth, these are lesser angels, but they're powerful. You know, they're quite powerful. So, I mean, if you were to say, if you were having a throwdown, Galadriel versus Gandalf, she ain't got a chance.
Right.
I mean, she's capable. Let's say she can put up a fight. Okay. Uh, Look at it this way: the only two people on Middle Earth at this time that have taken on a Balrog and defeated it is Gandalf and Glorfindel, and both of them got killed and brought back because of it.
Right.
Galadriel has never defeated a Balrog, never went into battle or used her powers into battle. This is all done in the movies. I'm not saying she's not powerful. I'm not saying she's not a force, but even in elf standard, you got Elrond and you got Glyffindel there. You know, even compared to elves, she's not the most powerful elf. But in the movie, they make her out to be that.
Right.
And even here, when you're going to see the scene in Lothlórien, yeah, her and her husband are the rulers of Lothlórien, but they make you seem like she's the power behind all in Middle Earth. And while she's important, and she was a member of the White Council, she's not the all-powerful being that they make her out to be.
Right.
And
She's just
again, that's not putting her down. That's not belittling her in any way. I'm just saying they make a Gandalf look like well, I'll do what she tells me to do. No, no, it's not the case. So sorry to ramble about that, but it's very important to point that out.
no, it's fine. So another thing too that I don't quite understand is how she's talking out loud to the Fellowship, talking about how this is a safe place, relax, and then she cuts off what she's saying out loud to speak to Moto's to speak to Frodo's mind.
Telepathy
Yeah,
again.
why?
Again, that is not in the book. That's movie.
Yeah, so
Okay, when she addresses them in the book, she's addressing them. Okay, just like I'm holding a speech with you,
mhm.
I'm having a speech with you. I'm not having a telepathic conversation with the guy next to you. That's not in there. And again, even if Tolkien wanted to write it that way, how would you put it in the book?
You really couldn't.
No. Okay. So, and again, I'm not saying she didn't have the power or she couldn't have. I'm saying it's not, you can't, it's not in the book. You couldn't put it like that in the book. And, you know, call it embellishment a little bit. That's all I can say. Call it embellishment. You know,
So
but she did she did talk to them when they were welcome there, and everything that goes on while she's talking to them happens in the book. What doesn't happen is that telepathic conversation she has with Rhoda. You know, so
so with that, after this, everyone's camped out in Lothlórien, and you hear background singing that Legolas identifies as, like, you could say, a funeral dirge for Gandalf. And Sam, of course, tries to come up with a poem on the spot talking about how great Gandalf's fireworks were. While this is going on, Aragorn and Boromir are talking, and whatever it was that that Galadriel said to Boromir was, like, really, really eating away at him. Basically, he was letting out his fears in this, how he was scared that his city and his people would ultimately fall to the enemy if he didn't get the ring. And he hoped that one day he and Aragorn could basically walk through Minas Tirith together. That's basically the PJ's paraphrase there, but is that accurate to the book?
let's just say he is even like in the movie when when you first they first meet each other at the council. He knew who Aragon is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, Trust me, it wouldn't have been stupid not to know that this is the person that technically should be king, but he's not king. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there hasn't been a king of Gondor. Not going by the movie, it makes you think like Isildur was the last king. He wasn't the last king. There were, there's 200-300 years of kings after him.
Right.
Uh, but the last king goes to a duel with the Witch King, never comes back. No one knows whatever happened to him. Presumably he got killed or captured or whatever. So technically the steward had to take his place. Normally the steward is like the prime minister, kind of like in Great Britain, even though they have a king right now, king, the prime minister. Well, this is similar. The steward's like the prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a royal house, but the royal house has kind of been uh kind of think of it like a lot of countries that used to have royalty don't, but
Yeah.
they still have a royal house, but it doesn't, they're not part of the government or recognized by the government.
Right. So
So
like England and Japan.
yeah, well, they have royalty, but if you think like Germany, Australia, Italy, Russia, they used to have kings or emperors. They no longer have them. They declared a
Right.
republic. So, but that doesn't mean there isn't members of the family, royal family. It just means their family is not in power. They're not
Hmm.
part of the government, or they're just, in the government's eyes, they're just regular civilians. But if they ever brought back that house, there are people there that they could say, okay, technically you're in line to be king. We want to bring royalty back. We'll bring you back as king. And
Okay.
Aragon is part of that house that technically should be king but isn't king. So, yeah. If anything, he's the chief of the Dunedain because the Northern Kingdom got destroyed. So, yeah. But if there's a technical heir, it's him.
Hmm.
And Boromir knows it. His dad knows it. His brother knows it. Probably everybody in the Middle Earth knows it. But unfortunately, you know, politics. Let's just throw it out there. But as far as like I was saying about Boromir, you know, I don't think even at the time of now, I wouldn't say he'd be welcoming Aragon to go to the city. I mean, just imagine this. Let's put it this way. It'll be kind of the equivalent if we had a king and we do away with the king, but there's still a royal house, a royal family, and you're the president of the United States now. Do you want to take a chance, or even politically wise, bringing that royalty there and say, "Oh, look, this is the guy that should be king"? No, it will
No.
cause divide and strife in your kingdom or your country, regardless. So, pretty much, you know, keep them far apart. I mean, he might like Aragon, and eventually, towards the end, it seemed like he did
Hmm.
on a personal level. But as far as bringing them back there, and we do know in the books and even the movie hints it that Aragon had been there in Gondor and spent time under a different name, which he didn't tell anybody, uh, serving Gondor.
Hmm.
So yeah, he. Let's just put it this way: he knew not to say who he really was.
Exactly.
So, but like I said, you don't notice in the movie, but you know in the book wise that he had been there. So,
So, with that, real quick, I want to say hello to Black Dragon. Thanks for joining, as well as Virginia from Virginia. There you go, Phil. Says, I learned something from this stream. Dirge, D-I-R-G, is a lament. A dirge, D-U-R-G, the result of a misspelling, is literally defined as a moron. So with that, while this is going on, Frodo is up and about, and he sees Galadriel heading to this one spot, and she has a basin of water with her that she pours into a bowl and tells Frodo to look into the mirror. And so Frodo looks into the mirror and sees the faces of his companions. He sees the Shire, and then the visions start to turn dark as he sees what would happen if he fails the quest. The Shire gets destroyed. Everyone in the Shire gets put into slavery. And of course, it ends with him seeing the eye. And that, if I'm not mistaken, that's the closest we ever see in the movie. I'm skipping ahead here, but that's the closest that we ever see in the movie to the scouring of the Shire.
yeah.
But we can talk about why they left that out when we get to Return of the King. But as far as this scene happening here, is that accurate? Does Frodo actually see all that
Yes.
stuff?
She shows him that basin in the water is some type of magical thing that she has. And when you pour the water in there and he looks in there, it gives him the ability to look at a possible possible future.
Right.
So that's accurate. That is
Okay.
accurate.
And of course, Galadriel says this is what would happen if you fail. If you don't succeed on this quest, Frodo, no one will. And of course, that prompts Frodo to offer her the ring. And Galadriel admits that yes, she does want the ring. And then we see her change from her normal form to this really powerful and terrifying form where she basically spells out what exactly would happen if if she did claim the One Ring as her own, but then it passes, and apparently this was some form of test that she was supposed to pass. I still don't
Yeah,
understand that.
the way you describe it, and it's hard to describe this. I wouldn't call it a test necessarily, because let's put it to you this way: she says she passes the test. Now I can go west and diminish. Okay, okay. Let book wise. The Noldor elves are diminishing
Hmm.
because they had been to the Undying Lands. They've come back, but now what I wouldn't even call it diminish. Don't think it's diminishing as losing power. Think it diminishing as a call. They're being called to go back to the Undying Lands,
Right.
and so the longer they're staying and resisting the call, they are, you can say, getting weaker in a sense spiritually.
Hmm.
So the longer they stay in Middle Earth, they weren't like, they're not as powerful like when they first returned, when they went after Morgoth to get the Summer Elves back. They were a lot stronger. They were not diminishing at that point. Now they're getting called. They're told they can come back, and their spirit is calling them to go. Legolas is not that, he's not diminishing because he's not an Ordor elf. But there are things that will happen that eventually he will feel called to go to the Undying Lands. Any elf can go to the Undying Lands, but the Noldor in particular, because they originally had left Middle Earth and went the first time to the Undying Lands to hear the call, are now even more so because now they're getting called back for a second time.
Right.
So her doing the touch with the ring and all that has nothing to do with her going west and diminishing. All the elves, Elrond, uh, Gladriel, any of the elves you see in the movie besides Legolas and his dad, uh, they're not diminishing. So they want to stay. The Sindar elves didn't never went there to begin with. They were
Right.
supposed to go, but they decided, hey, we like it here in Middle Earth. We're staying. So they have the offer to go, but they don't have that undying pull to feel that they have to go. So her thing with being near the ring, if that was the case, the actual ring that she has, but she has one of the three elf rings, that would be another reason, if there was a reason for her diminishing, that she would have to leave.
Right.
You see, it's not because of Frodo here, which he does in the book offer her to bring. He does offer the ring, and she refuses it because
Hmm.
she knows just as much as anybody that's in. Again, she was part of the White Council, and she knows the history of the ring. That ring, no one can control. There's only one person who can control that ring, and that's Sauron. Maybe Saruman, Gandalf's white before he becomes white, might have been, because he's a Maiar. He might have. Gandalf, maybe, but I doubt it. But
I don't think by Gandalf's own words he wouldn't
mm-mm.
have
Yeah,
because
Gandalf's always hesitant. about everything, even ever since he left the Undying Lands. That he's doing his job, but he's not trying to be all powerful and all that. He, like I said, he was the one that was offered by Gadriel, hey, you should be the one in charge. And because you have to remember, Gladriel wasn't at the meeting of the Valar, who they chose to be in charge. Saruman was supposed to be in charge.
Right.
So that shows you, even on level of authority. She technically she could see it. Gandalf should be in charge, but she's not powerful enough to deny what the Valar has said. It'll be like Saint Michael telling you should be president.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to be president, and I don't know, some preacher goes up to you and says, hey, you shouldn't be president. This person should be president. Who you listening to? You want to listen to St. Michael, right?
Right.
There you go. There's the whole thing in a nutshell. So, yeah. She
Okay.
doesn't get tempted. She does.
I gotta
awkward.
real quick, since we're talking about listening to higher powers, I gotta play this classic clip. You know which one it is.
Excuse me, I'd just like to ask a question. What does God need with a starship? I said, what does God need with a starship?
Jim, what are you doing? I'm asking you a question.
And Michael came in as we were playing that. What's up, Michael?
Oh, nothing much. How are you?
Doing well.
You seem to lower yourself now. You're not a Melkor, you're Sauron.
Or, as otherwise known as Gorthour the Cruel. For I have been awake since before the breaking of the first silence. And in that time, I have had many names.
So where we're at right now, Michael, is we're talking about the scene where Galadriel is tempted to take the ring from Frodo, and ultimately she refuses. So do you want to give any input on that before we move on?
Sure. So I actually really saw a video from an excellent YouTuber by the name of Nerd of the Rings, where it talks about the travels of Galadriel. And what I love about Tolkien, and this kind of ties into it a little bit, is just the fact that even though while reading works such as the Silmarillion and how it feels disconnected from the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit, it kind of got me thinking that after watching the video about Galadriel, how much the connections can be made between the Silmarillion and Lord of the Rings, where I'm sure, as I don't know if you talked about it, PJ, or if you've talked about it, but the scene where Galadriel says that she passed the test and that she'll fade into the east and remain Galadriel, that was not random.
Yeah, we did touch on that, actually.
Yeah. So it actually goes back to when Morgoth had first stolen the 3 Silmarils for the House of Feanor, which basically Feanor was the most powerful elf in his time, and Galadriel was the second powerful, but according to Tolkien, she was more wise.
That's wrong there.
Okay.
Well, she is not a Melkor is the equivalent of Satan. He's in this world. He is the first of the Valar. He's even over technically in creation higher than Manwë, who's the ultimate ruler in charge of the Middle Earth. Let's just put it that way. He is Michael. Melkor is Lucifer. When he fell, Michael took his spot. Same thing in this world. Melkor is he's not an elf. He's a Valinor. He's not even a Maiar. He's higher than that. Sauron's a Maiar. The wizards, all 5 of them are Maiars. He is a Valinor. Yeah. So, that's wrong. And as far as powerful, Galadriel is powerful, but she is not the most powerful elf.
Yeah.
Like I said before, there's Glyffindor. He's more powerful. You could even say Gilead. He was more powerful.
Gilgalad.
And the found and the brothers who
This is a
when
Feanor.
Feanor gets killed, the brothers who swore the oath. Now she is
Yeah.
a sister of them brothers. She is a sister, but as far as being powerful like them, no. No.
Yeah.
She's powerful as a Noldor elf. She is
Yeah.
powerful that way in that ranking. But as far as like they're showing her, like I was telling your brother, showing her having psychic powers and she's talking to these people and then using psychic powers to talk to Frodo. No, that's not no.
Right.
No. And what you see in The
Oh.
Hobbit, though she does go, she does not do what she did in the movie in The Hobbit.
Yeah.
She's not a
I
fighter.
figured not.
She is not a fighter. Capable of holding her own, though, don't get me wrong, but she's not a fighter.
So
That's
anyways,
not saying, and I'm not trying to diminish her in any way, but there are more powerful elves even in this time in the Third Age than Galadriel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
anyways,
about her diminishing had nothing to do about Frodo handing her a wing. All the Noldor elves are being called back to the Undying Lands. Doesn't have anything to do with the ring, with Sauron's ring. And if it did have anything to do with the ring diminishing her, a possibility would be because of the elf ring. She has one of the three of the elf rings. And when that power gets diminished, yeah, maybe that might cause her to have to leave. But she's going to leave anyway because all the Noldor are being recalled back to the Undying Lands.
yeah, it's
That's
a
a
valid
call they
order.
can't refuse. It's in their heads. The only way I can equivalent to make it simple, there was a mental thing with the people in the United States of going west. Okay, it was always in our heads. We have to go west. We have to go to California, and all
Manifest
these
destiny.
And this is the same thing that's going on with the elves. This isn't the first time the Noldor were called back to going to the Undying Lands. This is the second time they were called back. But then the first time when they went back is when they first went to the Undying Lands. They were living there, and then Melkor did his deed to kill one of the High Elves to get to Summerells. And when he steals the Summerells, all the Noldor are mad. They don't even listen to the Valinor, and majority of the Noldor elves go back to Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why they originally came back, because they were making war with Melkor.
So anyways, yeah.
I'm not trying to, like I said, the movies, the books, and everything. Yeah, unless you have to read the Silmarillion to have a fully understanding of it all. If you don't read the Silmarillion and you're just reading the Lord of the Rings and them three books, you wouldn't understand half of it.
Right.
Yeah. That's the thing. And like I said, even at this time in the movies, they make her out to be this all-power, the supreme elf, which she's not.
Right. Yeah. So
anyways,
so with that, now we get to the part, because we already talked about the creation of the Uruk-hai and the formation of the army that bears the white hand of Saruman. Now we get to the part that you wanted to talk about, Phil, which is the gifts that Galadriel gives each member of the Fellowship, starting, of course, with the cloaks that everyone gets.
Okay.
Like I remember even in the movie, they make special mention of the fact that it is rare that they will give people outside of their own these cloaks, right?
Outside of the elves and
of their
Lothlórien.
elven race. Yeah.
Them robes have a special ability, and you'd see it in the movie. You can hide, it keeps you hidden. But they're all the members of the Fellowship get clothed in that to help them on their journey. Because let's be honest, they might not, Kelrinraw and Gladriel might not have been at the council, but they know what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Plus, Elrond is their son-in-law, so they definitely know what's going on. So, yeah.
Isn't that
They're
also where they get the green leaf pendants that you see Aragorn and Frodo wear? I forget what the actual name is, but I know that in the next
the
movie,
Leaf
The
of
Two
Lauren?
Towers.
Lothlórien?
Yeah, that's
they all
that's
get
where
it.
they get it.
That's their little brooch that holds all the their cloaks together. They all get
Yeah.
that. But then there's individual gifts.
Yeah. I
So
know
you
that
can
at
go
least
with
in
the
the
first one,
movie.
Paul, whatever which one you want to go with.
So we'll start with real quick hello to Bucky's Crafting, saying gonna be lurking while I craft. Speaking of that, Black Dragon said been listening since you sent Michael the link. Just been collecting Omega particles to make Omega upgrades while I listen. I'm gonna guess that's in a game.
Also, hello
Oh,
to
that's
Black Dragon
STO.
says-
STO. I get it now.
Also, hello again to
minute.
Black Dragon, just because I know it's been a hot minute since you and I had last spoken. So, hello. I don't know if you have the clip, but it's ought to be a clip that says hello there, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Where is it? I don't see it, Michael.
Oh, that's fine.
So,
let's
anyways,
move on.
yeah. So start with the bow that they give Legolas.
Well, that's also in the book. It's a special bow. You notice they make a mention. Again, they'll say, our woodland kin. Telling you the difference, that they are different. Like I said, he is half Sindar. Sindar elves did not go answer the call to go to the Undying Lands. They heard it. They were going to go, but they decided, no, we'll stay here in Middle Earth. So, and let's just put it to you this way. The Noldor, in their craftsmanship, jewelry, weapons, and everything, is like, if you would rate it, you would rate elf made stuff over dwarf, and maybe dwarf slightly better than what the Sindar can make. Okay, that goes with weapons, that goes with jewelry, and all that good stuff. So when they hand him that, they're like saying, "Here's an upgrade. Here's a better than what you got."
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
So from there, real quick, Bucky says Merry and Pippin got the daggers. So let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
More than in the book, more than Merry and Pippin got the daggers. They all got, every one of them got a dagger.
Yeah.
And that daggers are special because them daggers were originally crafted by the Lothlórien elves when they went and battled in the last alliance. So one of them, these were daggers that were, let's just say, specially made for that war. And they're just giving them these daggers, and they have a little extra hump in their metal.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, a bit of a side note, but once we get to it, can I cover Gimli's gift?
Yes. So, real quick, hello to Ian, the headless guitarist, saying, "Gentlemen, just hopping in for a little before I get on Battlefront tonight. How goes it? Everything's going good.
I suppose.
We are talking Lord of the Rings. And by the way, Ian, check Messenger real quick. So with that, talk about Sam's rope.
Well, that's Elfish rope. And what you see in the movie is pretty much what you mean to get in the book. It's special rope.
Okay.
You could say magical, but let's just say special. If you tie it on a rock or on, like they did, and he's climbing down, you would say, "Oh, I can't go up the mountain to get it back untied." Well, with elfin rope, it's magical. You tap it and it unties itself. It's special rope. And don't forget, he asked for one of them nice shiny daggers.
Mm-hmm.
So Gimli gets
Yeah.
3 golden hairs from the head of Galadriel. And Michael, I know you want to
Yes.
touch on that one, right?
Yes. In fact, I've actually got the pages of the Fellowship of the Ring right in front of me, so I could actually read from it just to see the impact. And also, even though that the movie actually does pretty well describing what goes on in the books, I feel like that's to actually capture the sheer importance of this specific scene. Let's just use Tolkien's words by itself, which, by the way, just for YouTube's sake and liability's sake, currently I'm just reading and quoting from Tolkien, so this is obviously not a work of my own. So
Right.
anyway, before I actually go into reading the pages themselves, we actually have to look back at Silmarillion for some context. So, when Feanor was actually first crafting the Silmarils, he was actually inspired by Galadriel's hair, which was described to bear some resemblance of silver and gold. In fact, Feanor had actually asked for a lock of hair from Galadriel herself, and yet Galadriel refused. And so
Mhm.
that alone would say that this gift has a pretty much a heavy weight to it because Gimli got 3 hairs. But let's actually see what the pages from Tolkien say in the Farewell to Lothlórien chapter. So starting this quote here from Galadriel. What would a dwarf ask of the elf, said Galadriel, turning to Gimli. None, lady, answered Gimli. It is enough for me to have seen the Lady of the Galadrim and to have heard her gentle words. She replied, hear all ye elves, she cried to those about her. Let none say again that the dwarves are grasping and ungracious. Yet surely, Gimli, son of Gloin, you desire something that I could give. Name it, I bid you. You shall not be the only guest without a gift. There is nothing, Lady Galadriel, said Gimli, bowing low and stammering. Nothing unless it might be unless permitted to ask. Nay, to name a single strand of your hair, which surpasses the gold of the earth, as the stars surpass the gems of the mine. I do not ask for such a gift, but you commanded me to name my desire. The elf stirred and murmured with astonishment, and Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder, but the lady smiled. It is said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than in their tongues, she said. And yet that is not true of Gimli, for none have made to me a request so bold and yet so courteous. And how shall I refuse, since I commanded him to speak? But to but tell me, what would you do with such a gift? Treasure it, lady, he answered, in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if ever I return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in imperishable crystal to be an heirloom of my house, and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days. Then the lady unbraided one of her long tresses and cut off 3 golden hairs and laid them in Gidley's hands. These words shall go with you with the gift, she said. I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now in vain. And I'm going, let's see. On the one hand lays darkness, and on the other only hope. But if hope shall not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Gloin, that your hands shall flow with gold, and yet over you gold shall have no dominion. So,
Nice.
straight from Tolkien's words. And of
Yeah.
course, to give a little bit more background, yes, just like Bucky's Crafting said, there was actually a special hate between the elves and dwarves that even goes as far as how they were created. and how Eru Iluvatar had willed it to be so.
I mean,
But
quote from the very same movie. I will be dead before I see the ring in the hands of an elf. No one trusts an elf.
and then we
There's
see the
reasons
same.
why they said that's that line. The
Mhm.
elves and the dwarves have had wars.
Mhm.
Yes,
One of the kings, the Noldor,
Dingle, I think.
let's see, it isn't. I forgot it. Turgon gets
Turgon,
killed
okay.
by the dwarves because one of the deals that he made with his daughter to get married to a man was that Bryn had to go get a Cinderella from Melkor's crown.
Hmm.
And he thought that would
So,
be totally impossible for an elf, let alone a man. But
and that's the story of Baron and Luthien
yeah,
too,
he went and
right?
did that. He loses a hand, but he does bring back a Summerall.
Yeah,
So
that's the
he got to marry the king's daughter, which in
yeah, that's
turn
a
leads down to Aragon. That's one of his parents. That's one of the grandparents of
yeah,
Elrond.
yeah,
See,
Baron and Luthien.
so yeah, you see how it all ties together.
Yeah,
Even when you're getting into the Lord of the Rings, all this stuff goes backwards. So when they talk about the dwarves and elves, even when you're looking in the Hobbit, even the movies and the book, they're going to war against each other. They're not going to help each other out. Even when
hmm
even when Smaug appears, when you're even in the movie, you see the Legolas' dad go there, and then he's like, "Oh no, I'm turning back around. I don't need this." And he does it again in the Battle of the Five Armies. He was about ready to turn the elves around again, but it's
Mhm.
not his fight. Not
yeah,
worth it. The dwarves and the elves, majority of the time, not always, but majority of the time, there's a big animosity. They're not like the
hmm
elves and the humans who tend to get along pretty well.
Right.
yeah,
So when they, when you say I'll be, when you say at the council and he said don't never trust an elf,
hmm
they have a bunch of bad blood. There's been many times they've been fighting each other just as much as they're
yeah,
fighting Melkor and Sauron and the orcs.
yeah,
You know, so
yes. But what I love about this specific scene is just considering the fact that Galadriel had refused the request of Feanor, who was blinded by his own pride and greed.
she
And
could
keep in
sense.
mind,
She
he was
sensed.
the
They sensed her. She sensed the evil in them, and
exactly,
that's her grandfather.
yeah,
Feanor is her
Wow.
grandfather. So when she sensed that, she was like, "No, no, I'm
yeah,
not doing that." Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
And then several ages later, we have a, a dwarf where the strife between elves and dwarves is already apparent enough, but also to see a dwarf that's willing to humble himself and say, I have no gift because I was able to appreciate your beauty and hear your voice, but because you have told me to name my gift, then here it is. Then he
Mhm.
pretty much approaches that request with humility and saying that I'm not going to keep it for selfish intentions. If anything, I'm going to honor you by keeping it in something that's going to last forever. And then my house will forever remember what this heirloom would represent. And so it's a very striking difference between an elf and a dwarf, where in this case the elf Feanor had requested her hair out of selfish intentions, whereas a dwarf had requested this gift of 3 strands of her hair out of selfless intentions, which I find very amazing.
So the last gift that we see is the gift that Frodo gets.
the most
Mhm.
important gift.
The The Light of Irlindia.
Earlindi. And Earlindi, if you
Ariandel.
don't read the Summerall, you don't have no clue what it is and what it's about. Earlindi in the Second Age, that's both Elrond and Aragorn can
Elros parents.
trace their family back to, you have Bryn and Lothlórien as the first time an elf married a man. The second time is Elros and Elrond's dad, Elrindi, marries another elf. So this is the second time. Aragorn and Arwen will be the third time it happens. But what happens with Elrindi? He's a human. His wife's an elf. They have twins, Aragorn and Elros. When Melkor looks like he's going to wipe out the elves and humans and dwarves and win Breland and Middle Earth for him, he takes things in his own hands. And since he's a great sailor, he sails to the Undying Lands by himself.
Mhm.
Leaves his
But I
wife
think this.
and his kids behind. With the last two of Fëanor's sons who have sworn, the last two to hold the oath, they go after the last of the Summerells.
Mhm.
And
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, but isn't this the first time that a mortal man had sailed to Valinor?
yes,
Like
yes,
Eärendil was the first.
yes. Well, let's say not the first to attempt it, the first to succeed.
Yeah.
The first to succeed, because men are not supposed to go to the Undying Lands. That's only intended for the elves. The elves, when they die or when they go west, hence that's their technical. The elves are bound to the earth.
Mhm.
Okay, so they can't necessarily go to the equivalent of Errol Luvatar, heaven. That's the gift given to men. Until the Middle Earth is no more, then the elves can then be with Elru and Luvatar. So that's the boon of man. So since that's their boon, they have no business going or even attempting to going to the Undying Lands. But Elrond decides he's going to take a chance and go to try to get help. Meanwhile, Fëanor's two sons go and attack the very town of the elves that have the Summerell. Remember, their oath is anybody that has the Summerells, might be an elf, dwarf, divine being, their oath is to take the Summerell back. And Elrond's wife takes the Summerell and she literally throws herself in the ocean to drown. But Ono, the god of the sea, transforms her into gives her the ability that she can become a bird. Okay, so her and the Summerall fly west to go meet up with her husband, who's sailing the sea to go to the Undying Lands. She's fortunately able to catch up to him and hand him the Summerall, and they both go to the Undying Lands. Remember, she's an elf. She can go there. He technically can't. So when they first land there, he tells her, look, we're going to go to the first town, and you're going to stay there. I'll keep going. It's awful funny. He should be dead as soon as he steps on Middle Earth, but for some reason, it doesn't happen. So he's able to go further inland of the Undying Lands, and Menway sends his herald assistant and tells him, bring him to us. So he brings him to the council of the Valinor and lets him plead the case, and he pleads the case on behalf of elves and men that they need help. Melkor is just too powerful, and the Valinor agreed. So the Valinor assembles an army of elves and some of the Valar. They're going to go to war again. This will be the second time that they leave and go to Middle Earth to battle Melkor. Okay. But there's a problem. One of the Valinor who's in charge of death and dying, Mundus, I think is his name, says no man can go to the Undying Lands and live. So what they do is they take the boat and pretty much make it able to fly in the sky. And he's able to be on this boat, and they call it the Elf Star. And he has a Summeril mounted on his head, and he can fly across the sky, but he can never land. His boat cannot touch land, so he can fly in. Technically, you want to call it space. Think of it more now like a spaceship. Okay. Now his wife, who's an elf, can stay on the Undying Lands, but she has the ability to also go onto the boat with her husband if she wants. Okay. So he's able to succeed. He'll be the first person to ever succeed to go as a human to Undying Lands, and on top of that, live to tell about it. So the elves of the Undying Lands go with the Valinor. They beat Melkor, throw him into the darkness of the abyss, and he's trapped there for to the Undying, their equivalent of Armageddon. They defeat him, and that's after they defeat Melkor. That's when they tell the Noldor on Middle Earth, "You're forgiven for your transgression. We're going to send you the call," and the call meaning all the Noldor elves and any other elf, but technically the Noldor. You're welcome to come back to the Undying Lands. Now the Valinor have a problem. Elrond and Elros. They got to determine what is their fate. Okay.
Yeah.
Both their parents are gone. So they have to decide since they're both of elf and man, they get to decide if they want the fate of an elf or the fate of a man.
Yeah.
Elrond chooses to be an elf. He wants the fate of an elf. So that's why he's called Half-Elfen. Elros, his brother, chooses the fate of a man.
And he becomes the first king of Numenor. At the same time.
That's his gift.
Yeah.
So and
so
that little water that you see, they call it from the star of Arendi, is the light, and what they perceive of that light is just water that's touched the Summeril. So that's why that in the Summeril, if anybody doesn't know, that was one of the lights from the original two trees that gave light over the earth of Middle-earth before they were destroyed. And they had the power, the Summeril had the power to resurrect the two trees, but Fëanor wouldn't do it. He refused. So when you see that light, that they show in that little ball of water that Frodo got, that's a reflection of the light from the Summerils. That's how powerful the Summerils are.
Okay.
Well, at the same time,
when she says this is the biggest gift that we can give, you couldn't give anything more valuable. At
least not a Silmaril, but they're all gone.
Think of that light of the Arundi equivalent to the Holy Grail. Yeah, that's the best analogy I can give you. Think of it like the Holy Grail.
Right.
Yeah. So, the thing about the Silmarils is that it's also written that no evil hand could touch the Silmaril lest that hand get burned. So
Melkor touched it, and he did get burned, but he just didn't care.
Yeah. So, anyways, PJ, where were we?
So after all of that, we then see the Fellowship traveling by boats down the river, and also Aragorn got a little gift of his own. He got a new dagger from Celeborn. But as they're traveling down the river, the
You missed something.
Uruk-hai army are also traveling.
You missed
Basically,
something, Paul. I'm sorry, you missed something.
what did I miss?
Adriel told him, "There's no gift that I could give you
Yeah.
greater than what Arwen gives to Arwen."
The necklace.
That necklace. And that necklace is important because that goes back
Lesar.
to Lothlórien. You know, that's Aragorn and hers great grandmother.
Okay.
Yep. That necklace is, it's not just a heirloom, it's also how can you say, it has a little power to it, let's just say.
Right. So, as I was saying, they're traveling down the river. The Uruk-hai are also traveling kind of, well, the movie presents it as parallel to them, but I don't know if that's quite correct. But anyways, eventually they come to these two giant statues that sit on opposite sides of the river, the Argonath. And Aragorn is in absolute awe of them, talking about how basically they are his ancestors. So who were they?
So
if I remember correctly, I don't think that's Eärendil and one of his sons, but
if anything,
a line of kings after them. They're two kings of I want to say they were at the same time or near the same time. Equivalent, let's just say, maybe importance, like a, how can I put it?
I've got it right now. So
Like
it's
like a Theodore Roosevelt and maybe a John F. Kennedy.
Yeah,
they're not founding fathers, but they're just as important figures.
Yeah. So I got it right here.
Which one is which?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yep. So I got it right here. So unlike how I personally feel like the movie was trying to portray these statues, which upon watching the movie, I don't know if you felt the same way, PJ. Movie portrays the statues to be Elendil and his son Isildur, where
I actually didn't
actually
get that,
where, well, I guess that's just me. But according to the books, it's actually Isildur and Anarion. And it's not only that, but statues sitting on the River Anduin, which is also the same river that the one was lost in when Isildur had it last.
Okay.
If it's supposed to be Isildur and his other son, I could see it, because they're the two that get killed fighting Sauron. Not at the same time, but in the same war. But you have to remember that war took 10 years when they're laying siege to Sauron in Mordor. Right. And the movie doesn't talk about Isildur's brother. There's no mention of it, no talking about it. When the Númenóreans, Isildur, his brother Eärendil, and his brother, his father finds the kingdom to the north. The two brothers rule Gondor.
Yeah.
So after, that's why it's important, after the war, the last alliance, and they defeat Sauron, there's only one person left standing, and that is Isildur. And technically, he is now king of not just Gondor,
but Arnor.
Arnor as well. And that's the reason why he's going, after the war, he's going north. He's going north to go visit his, quote, great uncle, Elrond, before he goes to get crowned king of the Northern Kingdom. But he gets killed. Now, when he gets killed, that doesn't end the line of kings. There are other kings after him, which the movie implies not, but in book, you got 200-300 years of more kings.
Yeah,
and not all in the the same blood.
Yeah, I forget. So. I forget which specific king it was that was the last true king of Gondor, but I want to say that it can either be found in the appendices or unfinished tales.
It's in
I'm not
Summerall,
sure.
and it's
Oh,
the
it is in the
last
sum.
king is the one who fights the
The
Witch
Witch
King in
King
the
of
duel.
Angmar.
Yep. When he fought in the north, and he was with Glyffindel, he sees the Witch King running away, and he wants to go after him, and he tells him no, his fate is not to end here, and his fate to end isn't going to be at the hands of a man, but he will, he will meet an end. That's giving you a hint in the books to the future where, the girl kills the Witch King. But he
Exactly.
goes and knowing all that and being told all that, he still goes later on, 10 years after the War in the North, he's going to go on a duel. He's going to Minas Morgul, the duel, and nobody hears anything. He goes there. We don't know if he gets killed, he gets captured, but that's it. He disappears. So that's why the Stuarts end up taking control of Gondor. So, yeah. And like I said, everything plays a part. It's like every puzzle piece falls into place, but then everything goes backwards too. It doesn't just go forward; it also goes backwards.
It's like poetry. It
Yeah, pretty
rhymes.
much. It's poetry in motion.
Yeah.
So after they pass the Argonath, they reach the eastern shore and they try to set up camp there. And of course, they're stowing the boats, discussing plans. Meanwhile, Frodo has wandered off on his own because he remembers a warning that I kind of glossed over in his scene with Gladriel. Basically, Gladriel warned Frodo that Boromir is getting corrupted by the ring and he's going to try and take it. And so Frodo secretly was planning on leaving and going alone.
Yes.
But he runs into Boromir as Boromir's collecting firewood, and Boromir basically makes his play here, trying to at first sweet talk the ring from Frodo, but then it escalates further and further and further to the point that he tries to outright charge at Frodo, and that causes Frodo to put on the ring. And of course, Boromir realizes his mistake. So, how exactly did that play out in the book? Is that about accurate, or was it different?
Pretty much accurate. Same way. Pretty much, I can say from this point on, it's mirror image of the book. Everything that happens.
Okay. So let's talk about this then. I feel like this is something that was easy to spot, and we've already seen the signs leading up to this, but why do you think Tolkien made the choice for Boromir to be the one that gets corrupted?
Well, a lot of truth that he
actually
spoke about is true. Even when he was telling the council, while everybody's doing their thing in Middle Earth, Gondor is the one that's on watch, trying to keep Mordor, technically Sauron, at bay. No one's sending help down there. It's pretty much them and Mordor at it. Everybody else is pretty much doing their own thing and don't care. So in a way, there's a little frustration there because Boromir's saying, hundreds of years now, we're doing all the fighting while you're all doing all the living,
Right.
And Boromir, let's put it to you this way, isn't a bad leader. He's the one leading Gondor's armies. He's the one that's pushing Mordor back. He reclaimed Esgith. I can't even say the city's name.
Yeah.
Good. He's the one that gets it back. And you have to remember, and they do touch about it in the movie, but more in the book. His brother Fëanor was the one that was wanting to go to the council, not Boromir. Boromir wanted to stay. It was his father that decided, I'm going to send Boromir, not Fëanor, to the council. Had he sent Fëanor, I don't think he would have ever been corrupt by the ring. Because
Yeah.
he even in what you do get, you see he is, go do what you have to do, get rid of this ring. So I think Boromir was put in that circumstances by his dad because his dad wanted him to get the ring for himself. And you
Yes.
have to remember his dad's already getting corrupted because he has a Palantir. And that Palantir, since Sauron got a hold of one, and Sauron has
Sauron.
one, and he has the other one. The other four lost, no, either got destroyed or lost somewhere. No one knows where they're at. So you got two
Yeah.
evil people that are in control of these Palantirs, and here's his father. They're not show. They has look. The Pioneer has the ability to kind of like Galadriel's water basin thing, shows you possible futures. And Boromir's dad sees the future, but he doesn't understand it. He sees the battle in front of Minas Tirith and sees that these black ships are going to come and we're going to lose. Well, in reality, his father didn't understand that black ships were the Dunedain with Aragon. So they weren't going to lose. But I guess, like I said, you get a snippet of the future. You don't actually know the whole thing.
Right.
So he's already in a mood that we're going to lose. I need that ring. So Boromir's only there because his dad wants him there to get that ring. Had he sent Faramir, he wouldn't have happened. And we have to remember, Faramir, because of his mom, he was taught for a long period of time by Gandalf. So he has a little bit of wisdom in him. So,
and also, I know that it's plainly obvious in the movies, but also isn't in the book where Boromir was the one to suggest that the Fellowship ought to use the ring during the Council of Elrond against Sauron.
He was, yes.
Yeah, so I feel like that based off of circumstances like you were saying, Phil, made him more susceptible, but also just the sheer idea of saying, hey, let's take basically what's ultimately the cataclysm of the end of the world as we know it, and let's use it against the enemy.
Right.
And then that would pretty much in turn corrupt them.
Corrupted, but let's say he was corrupted with good intentions because he wanted to help his dad and help his people. Bad intentions, understanding that no one, even if he gave the ring to his dad, that still wouldn't have helped them. That would have only created another power with a problem, which would have ended up some way of Sauron getting the ring back.
As the old saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
There you go. So, like I said, it's a good what if. What if Faramir was the one to go on to the council instead of Boromir?
Yeah. So then I know that the next scene, Frodo puts on the ring and then goes into he goes to the monument of Amon Hen, and I know in the book it's that there's a chair that allows him to see great distances. In fact, the books actually say that whilst he is wearing the ring, not only is he transported into the unseen realm, but the ring actually enhances his senses for many miles, as it's said.
It's not in any of the book, but it is speculative with people in forums that seat is the actual seat that was Melkor used in his northern base up there. That had it was the same seat that had Huron had to sit as he watched.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Some people speculate that's the actual seat. It's not implied, like it's not in the Summeril, it's not in any book, but people implied that could have been the actual seat that Huron had to sit while he watched his son and his wife and his daughter get the doom of Melkor.
I could see that.
No.
Now, in the movie, on the other hand, Frodo did not sit in such seat. If
No.
anything, the scene played out where he was wearing the ring, and once he got to the top of Amon Hen, he saw the Eye of Sauron. Now, in the book, it's a bit different because he had to sit in the seats, and then he saw the Eye of Sauron, and then he takes off the ring, and then we're left with the scene between Frodo and Aragorn, right?
Mhm.
Correct. Where Aragorn was sent the whole time just trying to look for Frodo, unaware of what had just happened with Boromir.
Yeah.
Boromir, of course, Frodo tells him it's taken Boromir, and at that moment, Aragorn demands where's the ring, and Frodo thinks that he's about to get robbed again by Aragorn this time, and he tries to run away, but Aragorn's like, that's not why I'm here. I made you a promise I would never hurt you. And it's here that Frodo makes his intentions known to Aragorn, that he's basically, he can only trust himself. He has to go through this alone. And Aragorn is willing to let him go. And then it's then that the Uruk-hai attack.
Yeah. I don't know how it is in the books as of yet, since I still need to read it.
It's pretty much dead on. And
hold on, real quick. There's a detail. There's a detail I forgot to mention. There's a scene where Frodo holds out the ring to Aragorn, saying, "Would you destroy it?" And Aragorn can hear the ring whispering his name, and it's his own temptation scene. But instead of trying to take the ring, he just closes Frodo's hand.
Yeah.
You could say it's implied in his knowledge, and particularly being raised by Elrond, that he already knows the story about this ring. And whatever he's doing in his life, Aragorn is not wanting anything to do with the ring. Seeing it destroyed, yes, but as far as like taking it, using it, or anything like that, no. That's why he was very vocal in the council that no one can use that ring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
so if you see him, he's like, he pulls up Frodo's hand and pushes it back to Frodo. It's like, you can't take this ring. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm for. And what I'm trying to do doesn't have anything to do with that ring other than seeing someone defeated and that ring destroyed.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like a lot of people not only feel like that Aragorn is probably one of the best characters in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, but also one of the characters in fiction, especially when it comes to how true masculinity in men is portrayed, where a true man does not pursue power for the sake of having it, but rather resists his selfish temptations, and only he uses whatever power he is granted in the service of others, which is at least why in the movies he's not to first to claim the throne of Gondor, even though he was of the line of Isildur, and in theory he could have claimed the throne at any point that he wanted, but he didn't. And the scene pretty much sums up the entirety of Aragorn's character by one moment where Frodo asks, "Would you have destroyed the ring?" And Aragorn just replies, "I would have gone with you to the end."
Mm-hmm.
And he even recognizes that he has these same temptations as Isildur did 3,000 years ago, where
he has his own personal mission, and it isn't to be king. Okay, the king is a means to necessary complete his mission. Like Brin Lothlórien, he had to get to Summeril in order to get the king's approval to marry his daughter. Okay. Elrond, history repeats itself here in Middle Earth. Elrond's condition for him to marry Arwen is to become king and defeat Sauron.
Yeah.
All right. So his mission really has nothing to do, technically, with that ring. His mission is to do what he has to do to try to become king
Yeah.
and defeat Sauron. And like I said, if he not necessarily has to be the one to destroy the ring, but if he can help someone destroy the ring, all the better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's pretty much redoing what Bremen and Lothlórien did with the Silmaril, but instead of the Silmaril, it's Sauron's ring.
Yeah.
So,
And
I don't think he would have touched that ring if everybody else got killed and he was the last person near it. I don't think he would touch it.
Yeah.
I don't think under any circumstances he would touch it.
Yeah.
So he has a ring of his own. He has Bryn's ring. It's not magical, but it symbolizes what his great grandfather did. That ring, was on his hand when he took the Silmaril from Melkor's crown.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, I actually have a replica of the ring that you're talking about, Phil. In fact,
all the kings of
Numenor, show it, Mike, if you got it.
All the kings of Numenor got to wear that ring up until one of the last few, and the house of the royalty still got to wear the ring.
So this is the ring of Barahir, and this is pretty much the ring that Aragorn had worn, that had passed from Isildur, and then also Beren and Luthien, and then Beren father Barahir, who had once challenged the armies of Melkor.
And real quick, I want to say hello to Pacific 414. What's up, man? Thanks for joining.
What do you think? It's Pop Talk.
Also, side note to Black Dragon's comments, but yeah, we don't need any more Andrew Tates or anybody like that in today's culture.
Right. So back to the story. So by this point, the entire fellowship has been ambushed by the Uruk-hai, and Frodo is just trying to get away from it so that he can, in his mind, continue on the quest alone. Merry and Pippin spot him, and they try and get him to come over there, but Frodo says, no, this is it, I'm leaving. And so Merry and Pippin get the idea to distract the Uruk-hai away from Frodo so that he can escape. And this, of course, leads Boromir to get involved in the fight, and he starts fighting the Uruk-hai, and he's holding his own well. Of course, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are fighting too. Boromir's blowing on his horn, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are trying to get over there to help him. Boromir, as I said, is holding his own, but Lurtz, the commander, shoots him 3 times with his bow. And it takes those 3 arrows for him to really get down for the count. Shot 1, he's still able to keep fighting. Shot 2, he's able to keep fighting. But shot 3 is the one that does him in. And shot 3 is the one that breaks his horn in half.
There's a symbolist theme with the horn.
Okay.
And the reason that Tolkien put that in there, Tolkien was inspired by a lot of things. And when he was putting this Middle Earth together, he borrowed a lot from actual history. And there's a historical figure. When Charlemagne was fighting the Muslims in Spain, he succeeded and was going back into France. And the Muslims in Spain did a sneak attack in the rear, and the person in charge was named Roland, and he was pretty much in charge of the rear guard. So they were cut off, surrounded, and the only thing while they were fighting, what he had was a horn. and
Mhm.
he blew the horn. You can go on YouTube and you can read about it, listen to the story about it. It's called Roland's Horn. Pretty
Right.
much similar to what Boromir does. He blows the horn. Um, and just like in this, unfortunately, Argon and Legolas and Gimli were a little late to get there to save him. Same thing happened with Roland. They were a little
Right.
too late to save him. But he borrowed that same, just like we see later on when I told you about the winged hussars arrived. He
Mhm.
also borrowed from there. So,
Exactly.
like I said, Tolkien weaves a lot of real world history into his world, and that horn's one of them. That's a symbolized of Roland.
It's
So
funny because Tolkien himself stated that he doesn't particularly like allegory.
No, but it comes to find out even when you're reading Lord of the Rings, but more so in the other books, he does do a lot of it. Even though he might not
right.
like it, he does do a lot of it.
So, all of that said, Lurtz has Boromir on his knees, 3 arrows sticking out of his torso. He's about to fire a 4th one when Aragorn tackles him, and the two get into a fight. And yes, there is that one scene where the actor that's playing Lurtz throws the dagger at Aragorn for real, and Aragorn, for real, deflects it away.
Being real emotion.
Do you know why that is?
Why?
So it's actually because the actor who was playing Lurtz, the Urukai actor, had very poor eyesight with all that makeup on, and so he
Mhm.
was just throwing the dagger as best he could. And in fact, more about the excuse me. In fact, what we need, in fact, that whole fight scene was actually improvised, impromptu. Also, Black Dragon just responded to me, and I actually do agree with that. But of course, I think there could be a good balance between the two. But yeah, I agree that either men are turning into betas or men, well, I'll let you insert the link from there because I'm not going to get PJ's channel canceled for unpopular opinions. Not
Thank
unless that
you.
you were to give me permission to.
So, all of that said, eventually Aragorn wins the fight by first cutting off Lurtz's arm, impaling him with his sword, and then, because that wasn't enough, beheading him.
Mm.
And then the moment he gets his bearings, Aragorn goes to Boromir's side. He's dying, and Boromir basically apologizes for trying to take the ring from Frodo and congratulates Aragorn on being willing to let the ring go when Boromir couldn't, even ending it with saying, quote, "I would have followed you to the end, my brother, my captain, my king," which was huge because remember, one of the first things we hear Boromir say when we meet him is that Gondor has no king and Gondor needs no king.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You find it ironic, but then again, when you think about it, the Prince of Delort is a prince, and that's his uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a sense, if he's saying you don't need a king, why do you need a prince? It's more of at the time when he's in there and he's saying that, he's just not to be, let's say, a king. He's just saying he personally don't want Aragon as a king. And remember, Aragon had spent, I think it was 15 or 20 years in Gondor, never using his real name, serving in Gondor's army, and later on finding out, okay, he was down here. So it's a little bit of okay, you kind of pulled a wool over our eyes there.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's just say he towards the end he softened up to Aragon.
Exactly.
And not everything was maybe he was in his line, he was just pleasing his father.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And his father, yeah, he's steward. He doesn't want a king because that would mean him giving up power, you know? And like Gandalf says, it ain't for the steward to deny the king. So if Aragon wanted to press the issue of, hey, I should be king, the steward shouldn't stand in the way.
Mhm.
Exactly. So while all of this is going on, Frodo makes it back to the bank where the boats are, and he's reflecting on his conversation he had with Gandalf of saying, I wish the ring had never come to me. And then he gets into the boat and shoves off, but Sam is right behind him, and Frodo, of course, is trying to talk Sam out of following him, but Sam just wouldn't have it. He outright tries to swim to the boat, but of course he can't swim and nearly drowns, but Frodo dives in and saves him. And Sam says, I made a promise, Mr. Frodo. Don't you lose him, Samwise Gamgee, and I don't mean to.
Gandalf
So,
told him that.
yep.
Yeah, you have to remember Gandalf is a Maiar. So I won't say he has the ability to see in the future, but I would say has an inkling of saying, okay, if Frodo's going to destroy this ring, this little guy here definitely needs to stick with him no matter what. And you notice he doesn't give that command to Aragorn. He doesn't give that command to Legolas. Gimli doesn't
No.
give that command. It doesn't tell anybody that. The only
In
person he
fact,
tells.
in fact, as they're leaving from Rivendell for the first time, Elrond, I know we're talking about Gandalf, but I wanted to
Mhm.
mention this. Elrond is telling everyone no bond, no oath binds you to go any further than you actually want to go.
Yeah, that means if anybody at any point in time says it's enough, I'm did as much as I can, and I had enough, I'm leaving. That's it. Nobody can stop them.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, before all that, all the way back in the Shire, Gandalf made sure that he told somebody, no matter what, somebody is going to stick with Frodo,
Exactly.
and that person happened to be Sam. Okay, you have to ask yourself. This is another what if. Let's say the six minus Gandalf and Boromir. So now what is it? Five. No, six. Uh, would have stayed together and went into Mordor. Do you think they would have made it with six of them sneaking into Mordor?
Not impossible, but it would have been way, way, way
Way more
harder.
harder. So maybe a little thing there is the powers to be intended it always that it was going to be Frodo and Sam taking that ring to Mordor. And maybe Gandalf had a little inkling or knowledge of that. Why
Right.
he chose Sam to be the one. Like I said, he could have told that to Merry or Pippin. He could have told all three of them, hey, you three are not to leave him. No, he only told Sam.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, maybe you can call it fate or maybe the powers to be, but it was always, I think, intended that Sam and Frodo were to go that way on their own, and whatever was left was to do whatever they were supposed to. Notice that when Gandalf comes back, he doesn't go off looking for Frodo.
Right.
He goes looking for Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas. So that tells you right there the powers to be. Ilru Libitar. Don't worry about them two. Go to these people and do your thing. So I think it was always intended that way. Fate played his hand to work that way.
So after that happens, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli regroup, and at first, Legolas intended to follow them, but Aragorn said, "No, they've got their own thing. We've got to go rescue Merry and Pippin, and so Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli start following what was remaining of the Uruk-hai army, and the movie ends with Frodo and Sam entering that labyrinth of razor-sharp rocks, as Gimli put it. So that is Fellowship of the Ring, and obviously this is not even close to the end of the story of the Lord of the Rings. We've still got to cover Two Towers and Return of the King, and I'm sure that those will take multiple parts in and of themselves. But as for just this chapter of the story, Fellowship of the Ring, do you guys think overall the movie represented the book well?
Well, we missed one thing.
What's that?
That's where Aragorn puts Boromir in the boat and sends him downriver over the falls.
That's right. I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
It's more. It's implied. You see him push the boat, but you don't know what's in it. In the movie, you don't get to know what's in the boat until you see the Lord of the Rings, and hence Boromir, going downriver and pulling off the falls, and that's his demise. Doing away with his body. But
Right.
but you actually in the Lord of the Rings, when he's there at the river's edge, you see him push the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know what's in the boat. That's all you do. See him. Like I said, you don't find that out till later, and that plays an important thing too, because out of everything to get washed down river, the Rangers of the South, the Lothlórien Rangers,
Led by Faramir.
The horn. They find the horn in the river. Boromir's horn. So
right.
But other than that, I mean, everything towards the end of the movie, almost besides not mentioning about the chair, everything is pretty much dead on. It's a shame they didn't use the chair, but
I think they didn't do that because how many people at that time going into the theater would have read the books to the extent of reading the Silmarillion and all of that? I think they didn't include that because they would have lost people.
Like I said, I mean, no book that's been made into the movie do we get everything in the book into the movie. I mean, this ain't the only place it happened to. Harry Potter books, Star Wars.
Yeah.
You read the novel Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith. There's a lot more in it than what we got into the movie. You can never fit the book into a movie, so stuff has to be left out.
Especially as something as complex as Tolkien's Middle Earth. In fact, for a long time,
that scene plays an important thing when he sits on that seat. And then, like I said, when you go more in depth, there's nothing in the books or anything that says that is the seat of Huron. But somebody that has read The Children of Huron knows that Huron, when he was captured, was forced to sit for 20 years in that seat. And Melkor punished him by making him watch his family, his wife, and his 2 kids be cursed. Anything they were doing seemed to be the worst bad luck than anything that ever happened to any people in anything. And he was forced to sit there and watch. So can you imagine you sitting there watching every move that your kids and your wife make? You're watching, and it's bad. Everything happening to them, it always ends up bad because Melkor's cursed them.
Right.
And here in the middle of nowhere is the seat that has the ability, technically, to show similar with Frodo when he sits in that seat. I mean, myself, I would say the implication of it is the seat of Huron, because there is nothing else in there that you can compare it to that has that ability. And pretty much Frodo's seat he wasn't stuck in that seat for no 20 years, but he was able to see what he was able to see,
Right.
But other than that, like I said, this ending part that we've been talking from Lothlórien till there, the only other thing we didn't talk about was, and it's also in the book, Smeagol, Gollum is following him.
We
Every which
mentioned
way.
that is right.
Yeah.
I did forget that because there was a scene just before.
We're going to forget something.
Yeah, there was a scene just before we got to the Battle of Amon Hen where Boromir and Aragorn spot Smeagol, and then as they're trying to figure out what to do next, they get into an argument. Again, this is more of what we see with Boromir falling to the ring, but basically implying that Aragorn was a coward for not wanting to go to Gondor and take back his throne, but Aragorn just shuts him down. I will not lead the ring within 100 leagues of your city. And shuts him down hard.
You can't blame him. Like I said, I mean, first of all, the mission's supposed to be as low key as possible, and you're supposed to be moving kind of stealth, taking the ring near the biggest city pretty much on Middle Earth, and especially the powers that be there that want that ring. Boromir's dad wants that ring just as bad as Sauron and Saruman wants the ring.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Aragorn is not that stupid, you want to he don't want that ring nowhere near there. You look at it this way: you got enemies everywhere. Sauron used to be on their side, now turned against them. That's bad enough. Now you have two Maiars leading the forces of evil, and you have Boromir's dad, who's thus being twisted by the Palantir because he thinks he sees the doom, which he misinterprets, but he wants the ring for himself. All right, let's say he gets the ring. That's going to corrupt them, turn them even further evil. So now you have three evil powers on Middle Earth. You don't have that many people that can stand up to that. And to take Gondor, let's just say, out of the picture as being on the good side, and now put them on the side of Sauron and Sauron. Rohan is already, the king there is messed up. He's under the spell of Wormtongue.
Right.
Okay. The elves and the dwarves have to deal with the Easterlings up there fighting up in the north, so they can't. It would have been over. So Aragorn's not stupid, man. Yeah, you can't take the ring down there. The temptation's too great.
Exactly. So overall, I do think that yes, this movie represented the book well. Are there details that that didn't get made into the book or that got changed? Yeah, that's the whole point of these streams is discussing how they're different from the books. But I do not think that it was disrespectful of the books at all. I think that they went into it wanting to respect the original source material while also at the same time making it accessible for the general audience.
Look at
Michael?
it this way. We got the extended versions of the movie, and it helps a little bit out, more meaning in the movie. But let's just say we want to put the total book of the Lord of the Rings with all the characters and everything. With the extended version, you're now looking at almost 3 hours for the Lord of the Rings, maybe a little bit more than 3. If they were to put everything in that book into that movie, that's a 6-hour movie. And ask yourself, I don't care how great the Lord of the Rings is, how many of us are going to actually sit down for 6 hours to watch one movie?
Oh, it would be a lot.
Right. I mean, as a kid, we were always told, be happy with the cartoon version because the Lord of the Rings is too big to be ever made. I'm not talking about the Two Towers, not talking about the Return of the King, just talking about just the one, Lord of the Rings. It's too long. The only way they could do it, if they were to have done it, they would literally have to split the Lord of the Rings movie into two parts. So you would have Lord of the Rings Part 1, Lord of the Rings Part 2, Two Towers Part 1, Two Towers Part 2. So now instead of looking at 3 movies, you're actually looking at 6.
Right. Which
And again, from the time 1999, you're not guaranteed the movie was going to be a success like it
exactly.
was. So you would be taking a gamble there. I think they did it the best way they could. Yes, there's a lot of diehard tokens like I am. They're angry that there's a lot of people we would have preferred in the movie. Tom Bombadil, I would have loved to see Gryffindor. I would love to see Gilead, especially the scene where he should have been there with Erendi when he gets burned up. When they're fighting
Yeah.
together.
Mhm.
But and it's implied because you see in the opening of the movie, you see him for a brief moment leading the elves. It isn't Elrond leading the elves; it's Gilead leading the elves, and there is actual footage. Believe it or not, they do have a lot more footage for the Lord of the Rings. They could actually make a super extended version, but again, if they did that, it would be over 6 hours.
It
So,
would.
yeah, like I said, I could sit there I have the extended versions of all the movies, and I could do one movie a day for 6 days straight. But if they would have done it the way a lot of people would have wanted it done, all right, the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, and Return of the King, breaking them in half, that's what? Almost 9 movies? That would be 9? No,
Something
that would
like
be
that.
Mhm.
6
That would be
movies.
6.
Yeah.
You would basically have what we have with the original 6 Star Wars
Yeah,
movies.
you would, with no gap in between.
Mhm.
Kind of more like I would say Harry Potter.
Right.
Would be Harry Potterish. But you see, you already knew there was a success there with the Harry Potters with modern times.
Mhm.
The Lord of the Rings was a different story because a lot of people were like, okay, in the 70s, after we got the cartoon movies, the 3 cartoon movies, we said, okay, this is done. We're done. And that was good enough. And between that and when this actual movie came out, you're looking at almost 20 years. I wouldn't say Tolkien was as popular. It was known and
Mhm.
popular, but not popular than what you would say Star Wars or Harry Potter was in a book form at that time.
Right.
So, yeah, the possibilities then, if the movie flopped, the first movie flopped, it wouldn't have been that, it would have been a loss for the movie company. But if you were committed to making 3 movies, you can always cancel the other 2. Could you imagine if they had to cancel 6 movies?
Oh, it would have been
Yeah.
bad.
So, and like I said, I know myself, book form. I love Gryffindor, his story, his background, and what he did during the Lord of the Rings and the Two Towers and the Return of the King. I love Elrond's 2 sons. I would love to have them in the book, in the movie, but unfortunately, we didn't get them.
Mhm.
But then again, like I said, time restraints. It is what it is, and again, like I said, there is the books. You're not going to get everything that you read in a book. You're not going to get it in a movie. Never going
Right.
to happen. I don't care how. Unless there's very few books that I could only think of is maybe some parts of the Bible you can do a whole part. But even there, even going to do a movie from beginning to end of the Bible,
There's no way.
yeah, you got it. Yeah, always it's like I said, it's hard to not want something in a movie, but then again, you understand they had to do it.
Hmm.
So, you know, I'm
So
happy with the movies and the way they came out. I understand why some of this stuff was done the way it was done, but I'm still a person that's a fan of the books, and you know, I can always read the books anytime. Uh, I think it's always good if you like a movie so much, then maybe you should always read the book. Because there's always more in the book than there is in the movie.
right, Michael, anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, I have nothing other than, even though for a long time The Lord of the Rings was thought to be the unadaptable IP of its time, and even though, like Phil had said, they had cut out a lot of stuff like Tom Bombadil, the Barrow Downs, the Barrow Whites, just to name a few things, I do feel like that Peter Jackson definitely did the right thing with the casting and, the more importantly, the locations too, just because he used New Zealand to definitively depict Middle Earth, and he also made a call in doing something with the extended edition. In this case, typically with extended editions, they simply used recycled footage and then stitch it into the movie, with it all finished up, of course. But what Peter
Mhm.
Jackson did is that he actually went back and and shot completely new scenes and then put them into the movie.
Which
And
was
so,
amazing to see.
yeah. Well, from an artistic standpoint, he did an amazing job. Now, so far as an adaptability sense, I feel like that he did the Tolkien's work justice, even though there's clearly some things that were missing from the books. At least it's not like Jeff Bezos' adaptation that we shall not name by name.
Yeah, the less said about that, the better. Honestly,
I will say the ultimate critic was, when it comes to the movies, was Christopher Tolkien, uh, Tolkien's son, Christopher Tolkien.
Okay.
And he was very displeased with the movies. But then again, you have to understand he's looking at it book form, not movie form.
hmm
Again, like I said, there was no guarantee when this first movie came out that it was going to be a hit. You know,
Yeah, especially since he
what
was an
we
independent.
second guessing it now, knowing what we do know now, that was going to be a hit and a huge hit. Maybe if there was a way that the movie studio at the time knew that was going to be a hit, maybe they would have done it where they, instead of just a movie for each book, they would have broke it up and doing part one, part two, part one, part two, part one, part two. Yeah, it would have probably been better. They could have left some characters in there. But then again, I mean, look at it this way. They did do that when it came to The Hobbit. They took one book and tried to add everything they could into it. But you've seen just that one book, they had to split it in 3 movies.
right,
Originally two, but they had so much stuff they went to 3.
and
So
that's a whole other topic when
Mhm.
we get to those movies. I do want to cover those, but I know that those movies are not as well fondly looked at as as the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. So that's a whole separate
Yeah, but I'm
conversation
already
right
was
there.
saying they did, in a sense, do what the people wanted to do. You know, like I said, they weren't able to do that with the Lord of the Rings because, again, they didn't know it was going to be a hit.
Hmm.
And then, like I said, here's hindsight. Hey, The Hobbit, one movie. Well, no, let's do two. Oh, we realize there's so much there. We need to have 3.
Hmm.
So, yeah. But like I said, you have to look. It's easy to look at it backwards now, you know. But had they known, I think they would have broken up each of the movies into 3 parts. You know, so we would have got 9 movies. Get
And
out of that deal, you know.
and that would have been cool to see.
Like I said, it would have been like Harry Potter. But like I said, Harry Potter had the benefit as soon as the books were done, they knew the books were popular. So it wasn't that far fetched to think that the movies were going to be popular. So you know, you have to remember they were only a couple years apart when she wrote the last book when they started the movies. Okay.
Hmm.
So success was there. The difference is the last time Tolkien wrote the books, you're looking at 1956. So
Right.
there's a gap there. I mean, yeah, there were bestsellers and it was still popular, but to say it was going to be a movie hit, you had to remember 60s, 70s, hey, you want to make this movie? No, we don't want to touch that. It's just too much there. You know.
Hmm.
So, you know. That's the thing where you run into a lot of these people. If you go talk to fans, you go to some of the sites, you know. Yeah, and I agree with them. Yeah, I wish some of these characters were there for the Lord of the Rings. But then again, when you're looking at it from what they were looking at, what they were doing, it made sense what he did, even though it was painful, you know. So, and be thankful that we got the movies. It's better than nothing, you know. And to be honest, I was one of them people as a child. I seen the cartoon version movies, and I loved it. But I will tell you, I love the movies actually more.
Mhm.
So, but the extended, I will tell you this: right now, 2024. It's not worth buying the theatric release. You have
Agreed.
to have the extended version. If you
Yeah,
want to
that's
buy
the
these movies, even the Hobbits, the three Hobbit movies, buy the extended. Just
mhm.
get the extended.
Yeah. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and shut it down. Let's talk. Let's see. Can we can we agree on next week, Phil, same time for the beginning of Two Towers?
Sunday. I mean Saturday. I mean this time Saturday next week.
Yes, 9 o'clock Saturday.
Sure.
Okay. And we'll intend. So I'll admit I made a mistake in thinking that I could do a stream to a movie. So this time we're gonna intentionally break it up.
Yep.
So I'm gonna watch a third of the way into Two Towers. I'll let you know where I
Mhm.
stop, and we'll just talk about that chunk. Okay?
All right. All right. And in
And
Don't be
that
scared to
case,
make it instead of 3 parts. If you have to make it 4-parter, these streams, make it a 4-parter. If you think there's a lot there,
hmm,
Yep.
and as the Eagle said during the pages of The Hobbits, from the words of the Eagles, farewell, wherever you fare, till your eyes receive you to the journey's end.
absolutely. So with that, guys, we're gonna go ahead and shut it down for the night. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed to Release McCracken. I know he's not been active lately, but when he is active, I want to see a lot of people subscribe there so he has a lot of fans supporting him. And we will see you guys later.
Adios.